I'm Rachel Monroe, 33 years old, and after 8 years of packed lunches, canceled vacations, and working double shifts during tax season, I was finally one deposit away from owning my first home. But all that disappeared in a single Friday. While I was closing end-of-quarter books at the office, my sister drained our shared savings account to buy herself a luxury car. That night I walked into the restaurant where my family had gathered expecting answers, maybe apologies. What I got instead was a room full of polite smiles and blank stares, and a mother who said I was overreacting. By the end of that meal, I realized I wasn't their daughter or sister anymore. I was just the one they all believed would forgive anything. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with the people you love most. I was raised in a small town in Indiana, the kind of place where folks still wave to each other at stop signs and casseroles show up unannounced after funerals. My parents were modest people. My dad worked for the post office. My mom ran the circulation desk at the library. They believed in hard work, respect, and helping family whenever you could. That lesson stuck with me maybe too well. Even after I graduated with my accounting degree and moved to the city for work, I sent money home when things got tight, paid off my sister's college loans when she dropped out, and covered surprise bills without question. At first it felt good to give, but over time it started to feel more like an expectation than a gesture. Lily had always been the softer one, sweet, emotional, good at making everyone feel like they needed to protect her. She bounced from idea to idea, wedding planning, dog grooming, wellness coaching, but nothing stuck for more than a season. My parents shielded her from consequences, the way you might shield a toddler from sharp corners. Meanwhile, I kept grinding, saving, and telling myself that someday it would all balance out. That someday I'd be the one my parents were proud of, not just the one they depended on. I had been building that house fund since I was 25. Every tax return, every year-end bonus, every freelance client on weekends went into it. I tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet color-coded by year. And even though I had my own account, my mother insisted on setting up a just-in-case joint one. Her name was there. She said only for emergencies. I knew better, but I agreed. Grandpa had just passed, and I didn't have the fight in me. When the call came from the bank that morning, I thought it was a mistake. I called Mom from the break room, heart pounding, already knowing. She was calm, said we should talk about it later. That evening, I walked into Golden Walk, the same restaurant where we'd celebrated birthdays and graduations for decades, and saw 20 members of my extended family waiting. My sister was at the head of the table, turning a silver key fob in her hand. The Mercedes logo caught the light just enough to confirm what I feared. I stood in front of them all, still in my work blouse, still hoping there was a reasonable explanation. But no one looked surprised. No one even looked confused. My mother smiled tightly, gestured to the empty seat beside her, and said they'd been waiting. And just like that, I knew. They had known all along. As I stood beside that long banquet table, I could feel the weight of every stare pressing into my skin. 20 relatives, 3 generations of Monroes, all quiet, as my mother leaned forward and asked me to sit. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My eyes were on the key fob in Lily's hand, the silver Mercedes logo spinning beneath her thumb like some kind of trophy. I asked one question. "Where's my money?" The room went still. Even the waiter paused mid-pour at the table behind us. My mother let out a small laugh, the kind she used when she thought she could control the mood. "We're here to talk about that as a family," she said. "Let's not turn this into something bigger than it is." My voice didn't raise, but it cut through the quiet. That money was for a house. It's gone. Her smile didn't falter. "Rachel, you kept it in a joint account, one that has my name on it for emergencies. You work long hours. I was helping you manage your savings." I looked at Lily. She crossed her legs slowly, leaning back like she was settling in for a show. "It was an emergency," she said. "I needed a car to get to interviews. Or would you rather I stay unemployed forever?" Aunt Carol, sitting 3 seats down, nodded. "She's right, Rachel. Young people need reliable transportation. She could have bought a Honda," I said, still standing. But the Mercedes was such a good deal, Lily interrupted. 2 years old, fully loaded, and I got it for way under market. I mean, it practically paid for itself. My mother lifted her hand gently, asking for quiet. Rachel makes good money. She'll rebuild the fund in no time. She turned to the rest of the table. Family helps family. It's what we've always done. That phrase, family helps family, had been thrown around so many times over the years, it had lost all meaning. But the others nodded, some half-heartedly, others with full approval. I glanced at my phone. A text flashed across the screen, but I didn't open it. Not with all their eyes on me. 8 years. That's how long I'd been covering dinners, picking up extra bills, solving whatever shortfall popped up that month. First, it was small textbooks for my cousin Derek, a deposit for my uncle's furnace repair. Then it became expected. My mom would call with a calm voice and a new reason. My sister's computer died during a course she never finished. My dad's car broke down and I covered the repairs without a second thought. A new roof, a dental emergency, $1,000 here, $5,000 there. My name became shorthand for solution. She's being dramatic, Lily said loud enough for nearby diners to hear. This is why she's still single at 33. No guy wants someone who counts every penny. Uncle Richard chuckled. Money's no good if you don't use it, Rachel. I didn't answer. I just looked at my mom. That account was for a house. That was my future. Cousin Elise spoke up from across the table. You could rent. Most people rent. There's nothing wrong with that. Aunt Carol stirred her tea. A family member's confidence is more important than property. Lily's been happier this week than I've seen her in months. My father finally looked up. His voice was quiet. Your mother and I talked about it. We think you're being selfish. That word dropped like a stone. Selfish. After 8 years of giving, that's what they landed on. My mother chimed in. You make 6 figures, Rachel. Your sister's trying to get on her feet. The least you could do is help. I looked around the table, searching for even one person who would speak up for me. No one did. I glanced down at my phone again. Another message. This time the contact name caught my attention. Charles Ridley, the family lawyer. 3 words glowed on the screen. Ready when you are. And suddenly, I was back in that hospital room, holding Grandpa Walter's hand 2 days before he passed. He'd looked tired, but his grip was strong. You're the only one I trust, Rachel, he'd whispered. They mean well, but they don't know how to stop. Your mom gives too much. Your dad follows along. Lily, she takes. Charles has everything. Call him when you need to. You'll know when. That night I hadn't understood. I thought grief was making him paranoid. But now in that restaurant, watching Lily swing my future on her keychain while my parents nodded along, I understood exactly what he meant. I looked back at them. You think I'm selfish because I wanted a home, because I made a plan, because I told you what that account was for. No one answered. Nathan and I were going to put the down payment on a house this summer. We've been saving together, counting on that money. We were supposed to book the venue next week. The silence around the table grew heavy. Weddings apparently were something they could understand. My mom started to speak, but I pulled up my banking app and turned the screen toward her. Interest rates have jumped 2% since I started saving. That's $400 a month in extra payments. That card didn't just take my money. It took my timeline. It took my security. Lily shrugged. You'll figure it out. You always do. My phone rang again. It was Nathan. His photo filled the screen, one we'd taken at his sister's wedding, both of us laughing at something off camera. Answer it, Lily said. Go ahead. Tell him the truth. I did. I answered the call with everyone watching. Nathan's voice came through warm and steady. Hey, babe, I'm at the venue. They need the deposit by Monday or we lose the date. My voice wavered. Nathan, the money's gone. There was silence on the other end. What do you mean, he asked. What happened? I felt every eye on me. My sister spent it. She bought a car. My parents knew. There was nothing but quiet on the line for a few seconds. All of it he asked. Every cent I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. Yes. Nathan's voice was tighter now. "Rachel, we had a plan. You told me that account was safe, that your mom was just on it for emergencies." My mother reached for my hand, trying to take over the conversation. I pulled away. "Nathan, I'll fix this." He hesitated. "How? The venue needs $12,000 by Monday. I can cover $8,000. What about the rest?" Lily leaned forward again, voice bright. "She always figures it out. That's her thing." Nathan heard her. "Is that your sister? Is she serious?" "I have to go," I said. "Rachel, wait." I ended the call. The phone buzzed again immediately, but I didn't answer. My dad exhaled sharply. "See? This is what happens when you prioritize money over family." My chair scraped loudly as I stood. "You just cost me my wedding." Mom stood too. Her voice was sharp now. "Sit down. You're making a scene." I looked her in the eye. "You embarrassed me when you raised a thief and called it love." I turned to leave my phone still buzzing in my hand. Just before I reached the door, I looked back. "You have 24 hours to return the money." Lily laughed. "Or what?" I smiled for the first time that evening. "Or you'll find out what Grandpa really left me." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting every month it took to build that fund. 8 years, $127,000. And in one afternoon, it was gone spent like it meant nothing. My phone lit up every hour. Missed calls from Nathan, texts from my mom that ranged from calm to pleading. I didn't answer any of them. I just kept seeing the way Lily spun those car keys like she'd won something. At sunrise, I walked into the kitchen and pulled out the notebook where I'd tracked every dollar. Color-coded tabs, handwritten notes. I flipped to the first page where I'd written the goal in blue ink, down payment by $35. I was ahead of schedule until now. I used to bring this book with me on my lunch breaks at work. While my coworkers ordered takeout or made weekend plans, I sat in the corner with a homemade sandwich updating projections. I skipped happy hours, turned down vacations, wore the same coat through 5 winters. That money didn't just represent a house, it was my safety, my future, my choice. Later that morning, I sat on the floor of my apartment sorting through papers Grandpa Walter had given me before he passed. The folder was old, edges soft, from years in a drawer. Inside were notes he'd made about trust funds, property deeds, things he wanted me to look at when the time came. At the time, I thought he meant decades later. But now I wasn't so sure. The apartment stayed quiet, except for the occasional hum from the refrigerator. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window watching traffic move slowly down the street. It was Saturday, but I wasn't going anywhere. The last time I saw my family, I told them they had 24 hours. That clock had started ticking. By mid-morning, the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was before I looked through the peephole. My parents and Lily stood on the other side, all 3 dressed like they had somewhere important to be. My mom had on the red blazer she used for serious conversations. Dad clutched his tablet, probably filled with old family photos. And Lily, she was live streaming. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. "Where's my money?" I asked. My mom's voice was firm. "We need to talk. Like adults." She brushed past me without waiting. The other 2 followed. They filled the living room like they owned it. Lily kept her phone pointed at me, narrating under her breath. "Here we are in my sister's luxury apartment where she lives all alone because she refuses to, I cut her off, turn that off, or go outside." She smirked, but finally stopped recording. My dad placed the tablet on the coffee table and hit play. A slideshow of family birthdays, holidays, graduations began to roll. "Look at everything we've been through," he said quietly. "We've always been there for each other." I remember those I said. I also remember who paid for most of them. My mom sat on the couch like it was hers. "This isn't about the money," she said. "It's about family. We didn't steal anything. You had our names on the account. That means we all trusted each other." "Then where is the trust now?" I asked. Lily shrugged. "It was an emergency. You said Mom could use it if needed." I shook my head. A luxury vehicle isn't an emergency. Not when you've never held a job for more than 6 weeks. My mother stood up. If it's that important to you, we'll arrange a payment plan. Lily will pay you back. I looked at my sister. When? She blinked. Once I find work. I nodded. So, no time soon. Silence settled between us. I pulled out my phone and opened the email app. Charles Ridley had already responded. We're ready in 1 hour, it said. I turned to my mother. Who's Charles? She asked. Her fingers moved to the pearl necklace she always wore when nervous. Grandpa's attorney, I said. Lily lowered her phone, the smirk finally slipping. My dad frowned. Your mother handled the estate. What's this about a lawyer? I walked to my desk and opened my laptop. Did she ever tell you about the meeting Grandpa had just before he passed? My mom shook her head. There was no meeting. I looked her in the eye. August 15th, 3 years ago. You weren't there, but Charles was. Their faces changed then. My father sat down slowly. My mother's voice got smaller. You're bluffing. I clicked through my email. Charles has been waiting for this call for 3 years. Grandpa gave him instructions, ones you don't know about. Lily stepped back. What kind of instructions? I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the folder on my desk and set it on the table. 45 minutes. That's how long you have to return what's left of the money. If you don't, Charles is coming with the documents. Mom's voice cracked. We can't give it back. The car's already in my name. It's been driven. My dad stood again, slower this time. Rachel, please. We're your parents. Don't do this. I kept my eyes on the folder. Funny how family only matters when you want something. They left without slamming the door, but I watched through the peephole until they disappeared down the hallway. I picked up my phone and sent one message to Charles. See you in an hour. The rest of the morning moved in careful steps. I changed into something professional, pulled back my hair, and set out copies of every financial document I'd saved. Charles arrived right on time, briefcase in hand, accompanied by a notary and his assistant. He shook my hand like we were old colleagues. Miss Monroe, he said, I've been expecting this call for some time. We didn't have long before they returned. I could hear their voices in the hallway, my mother's rising, my father's low and tense, Lily's more frantic now than smug. Then came the sound of a key turning in the lock. One I had forgotten she still had. They pushed through like a storm. Behind them came Aunt Carol and Uncle Richard, both looking like they didn't know what they were walking into. My mom tried to speak, but her eyes locked on Charles. He stood calmly. Mrs. Monroe, my name is Charles Ridley. I represent the estate of Walter Monroe in full. Her face changed completely. In full, my father asked. Yes, Charles replied. You received the assets your father wanted you to think you received. The rest, the properties, the investments, the trust were held separately. My mother's voice rose. What trust? Charles opened his briefcase. The Monroe Family Trust. Established 3 years ago. One trustee. Full discretion. Who but she already knew. Charles handed me the folder and stepped aside. My name was at the top in bold. Rachel Monroe, trustee. Charles didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His calm, even tone cut through the room like a bell. As of this morning, Rachel Monroe is the sole trustee of the Monroe Family Trust. She has full discretionary authority over all funds, assets, and properties contained within it. He placed the folder in front of me, its gold tab neatly labeled. My name was printed clearly on the front page, along with a date that stopped my mother in her tracks, August 15th, 3 years ago. You're lying, she said quietly. That's impossible. Your father handled the paperwork after your grandfather passed. Charles looked up from the briefcase he was still organizing. Mr. Walter Monroe met with me personally on the 15th. Present in the room were myself, my assistant Julia Mays, and Dr. Karen Bell, his attending physician. He was alert, in full control of his faculties, and very specific in his instructions. My dad sat down without a word. My mom stayed frozen where she stood. Aunt Carol leaned in, trying to read the heading on one of the documents. Lily crossed her arms and turned toward the wall like the whole thing was beneath her. Charles continued opening a second folder. For clarity, the trust includes 3 residential properties, 4 commercial buildings, and an investment portfolio currently valued at $3.2 million. It also governs any joint or authorized user accounts that were once held in common with Mr. Monroe. These are now under Rachel's control. My mother shook her head. No, I've been managing those accounts for years. I was on them with him. Charles nodded politely. Correct. You were listed as an authorized user, not a co-owner. That distinction matters. Mr. Monroe structured the accounts to allow for access but retained full legal ownership. Upon his death, those assets passed to the trust, not to you. Lily's eyes flicked toward her phone, then toward me. You're not going to take everything. You can't. I opened my laptop and logged into the trust portal. Each account lit up showing balances, activity logs, and control options. One by one, I initiated freezes. Checking. Investment. Emergency. Personal credit cards. I turned the screen toward my parents. Everything is paused for now until the terms are reviewed. My mother picked up her phone and opened her banking app. Her lips parted slightly as she read the message on the screen. Access denied. My father checked his too. Same result. Lily tried hers and looked panicked for the first time. My cards declined. Charles remained composed. Miss Monroe, the car in your possession is also under review. Purchasing a luxury vehicle using trust funds without the trustee's permission may constitute fraud depending on state law and how the dealer processed the transaction. Uncle Richard stepped forward. You can't just freeze everything. This is a family estate. It belongs to all of us. Charles pulled out another document. No, sir. Mr. Monroe's revised trust signed and notarized names Rachel Monroe as sole trustee. Distribution of any funds or assets is now subject to her discretion. This was deliberate. The trust includes a letter of intent explaining his reasoning. Would you like me to read it? My mom didn't answer. My dad gave a single nod. Charles unfolded the letter, reading aloud. I, Walter Monroe, created this trust to protect the legacy I built over a lifetime. I am appointing Rachel Monroe as sole trustee because she has shown financial discipline, personal integrity, and an understanding of responsibility. She has never asked for anything, only contributed when needed. The same cannot be said for others. In 8 years, Diane has withdrawn over $180,000 for personal expenses. Gerald has invested trust funds without approval. Lily has received multiple loans disguised as gifts. The extended family has borrowed generously without repayment. Going forward, Rachel will determine how and when distributions are made. This is not punishment. This is stewardship. When Charles finished, the room was completely still. Aunt Carol looked down. Uncle Richard sat back, face flushed. My mother didn't say anything. She just stared at the floor. Lily stepped forward again, voice sharper now. You planned this. You talked Grandpa into it while he was dying. Charles shook his head. Miss Monroe, your grandfather was very clear. In fact, Rachel was not present for the meetings. She was only informed after his passing when the trust came into legal effect. I stood then, closing the folder carefully and placing it beside my laptop. I didn't ask for this. I didn't know the full scope until today. But I'm not ignoring it either. Not after everything. Lily's eyes narrowed. You're going to kick us out, take the house, cut us off. That's what this is about, right? I looked at her. The house is held in trust. You live there at my discretion. I'm not doing anything today, but things are going to change. Charles spoke again. There's one final item. Mr. Monroe requested a brief holding period. All disbursements will be paused for 72 hours. During that time, the trustee may review accounts, debts, and prior usage. Once that's complete, she'll determine terms moving forward. My dad asked the only question left. What if we contest it? Charles looked up calmly. You're welcome to try, but I assure you the documents are solid. Any legal challenge will likely fail, and if it doesn't, all assets go into probate where a court will decide. My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. Why would he do this? I opened my mouth to answer, but the words didn't come right away. Then I remembered something Grandpa once said during a quiet afternoon on his porch long before he got sick, because he wanted someone to protect what he built, and because he knew what happens when you give people more than they're willing to earn. Lily turned toward the door without another word. My mother followed. My father lingered for a moment, looking around the room like he didn't recognize it anymore. Then he nodded once at me and left without speaking. Charles began collecting the documents, his assistant organizing them into separate folders. "We'll reconvene on Monday. Let us know if you want to issue notices or set initial guidelines. Otherwise, we'll wait for your decision." I thanked them quietly and walked them to the door. Once they were gone, I stood in the center of the living room, the silence settling in like dust. For the first time in days, no one was calling, no one was knocking, and no one was asking for anything. But I knew that wouldn't last. Monday morning came early. I was already dressed and reviewing documents at the dining table when Charles called to confirm that his office was ready. I'd asked for a conference room with enough seats for everyone: my parents, Lily, Aunt Carol, Uncle Richard, and any others they decided to bring along. I didn't want confusion. I wanted them to see everything clearly laid out on the record. The elevator doors opened at 10:55 a.m. sharp. Charles's assistant, Julia, met them in the hallway. She led them into the room in silence. No one spoke as they sat. My mother took the seat closest to me. My father followed. Lily hovered near the back, adjusting her phone before slipping it into her purse. Charles stood at the head of the table, hands folded. "Thank you all for coming. As previously stated, today's meeting will finalize the administrative conditions of the Monroe Family Trust. A court reporter is present, and everything said will be entered into the record." The room remained quiet, the only sound coming from the faint clicking of keys as the court reporter typed. Charles continued, his voice calm and deliberate. "This meeting is not for debate. It's to establish terms for ongoing access to trust assets. The trustee, Rachel Monroe, has reviewed all relevant documentation and account history. Her decisions are supported by the trust's legal framework." He turned toward me, giving a slight nod. I stood steadying myself before speaking. "I've decided to implement monthly stipends. Each immediate family member will receive $1,000 for basic living expenses, rent, groceries, transportation." Lily sat up straighter. "That's not even enough to cover my car payment." I didn't look at her. "That car was purchased using funds taken without consent. The dealership has already been notified. Their legal team and mine are in communication." My mom opened her mouth, but Charles raised a hand. "Miss Monroe has offered a resolution." He handed Lily a single-page form. "If you return the vehicle voluntarily and secure employment within 30 days, the matter will be closed. If not, we will proceed with formal charges for unauthorized use of trust assets." Lily looked down at the paper, but didn't move to take it. Charles resumed. "Beyond the stipends, all discretionary spending is suspended. The family credit cards are permanently canceled. Utility and mortgage payments on the Monroe residence will continue at Rachel's discretion. If additional funds are needed, written requests may be submitted." Aunt Carol leaned in. "What about our repayments? The loans we took before your grandfather passed." I opened a folder and placed copies in front of her and Uncle Richard. "Each of you has a balance. You'll be placed on an interest-free repayment plan. As long as regular payments are made, the trust will not report any debt to outside agencies." Uncle Richard looked uneasy. "And if we can't keep up, then the trust will explore third-party collections." My mother spoke quietly. "This isn't what your grandfather wanted." Charles opened the final document in his stack. "Actually, it is. This clause added 6 months before his death includes what he called a performance provision. If the family demonstrates financial responsibility, additional funds will be made available. But if those conditions are not met within 1 year, the remaining assets will be donated to the Indiana Rural Literacy Fund." My father sat back in his chair, stunned. "All of it, all of it," Charles confirmed. Lily's voice rose again. "So we're being punished." "No," I said. You're being given a chance. Every one of you. Charles listed the requirements. Secure steady employment for at least 12 months. Complete a certified financial education course. Enrollment forms are included. Make monthly payments toward any debt owed to the trust. No additional requests outside the standard allowance. Lily crossed her arms. This is humiliating. It's accountability, I said. For a moment, no one spoke. My mother stared down at her hands. My father's brow furrowed. Charles slid one final envelope across the table toward me. Your grandfather left this with instructions to read it at this meeting. I opened it. Inside was a note written in shaky pen. Rachel, they won't thank you for this. Not at first, but someone has to be the one who breaks the cycle. Don't let them wear you down. Love with limits is still love. Grandpa. I folded the note and placed it in my purse. Lily finally reached for the paper Charles had offered her. If I sign this, she asked, do I still get a car? You'll receive up to $10,000 toward a used vehicle once you complete 6 months of documented work. She stared at the paper, then signed. My mom stood as well, her voice quieter now. And if we meet the terms, I looked at her. Then next year, each of you will receive a one-time bonus of $50,000. Uncle Richard raised an eyebrow. Everyone? Yes, I said, but only if everyone qualifies. If one person fails, the bonus is forfeit. The tension in the room shifted. The dynamic that had always flowed one way, expectation-dependency, was changing, slowly but definitely changing. As the meeting closed, Charles summarized the final terms. The court reporter confirmed the transcription would be delivered by end of day. One by one, my family stood gathering their folders and forms. Some left without a word, others offered faint nods. My father lingered near the door, then said softly, "We'll try." I nodded. That's all I'm asking. As they filed out, Charles glanced over. You handled that well. I hope so, I said. Now we wait and see who means what they said. But deep down, I knew the real work was just beginning. The first real sign of change came just 2 days after the meeting. Early Wednesday morning, I got a call from the dealership. They confirmed that the Mercedes had been returned and the keys handed in by Lily herself. The manager told me she didn't say much, just signed the forms and walked out. But by the time I checked social media later that day, I saw she'd already tried to control the story. A video had gone up, then quickly disappeared. Lily standing in front of the dealership, voice shaking, claiming she was being punished by her own sister for wanting something nice. But the comments didn't go the way she expected. People remembered the live stream from the restaurant. Screenshots of the car purchase had already circulated. One person wrote, "Your sister gave you an out. You chose a Mercedes." Another said, "She gave you a job clause instead of pressing charges. Be grateful." By nightfall, the video was gone, and her follower count had dropped by more than half. Brands that once sent her PR packages started requesting their items back. That version of her life, the curated one, was slipping through her hands. Thursday morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Charles. The employment lead we'd arranged had reached out to Lily directly. The dealership was willing to offer her an entry-level position in their customer service department. It wasn't glamorous, and it didn't come with perks, but it was steady work. She'd get commissions and the chance to learn a structure she'd never had. I didn't hear from her directly, but the next day I got a screenshot from the HR rep showing her acceptance email. She'd start Monday. Later that same afternoon, I saw a new budget spreadsheet come through the shared trust folder, one I hadn't asked for. It was from my mother. She'd listed out their monthly expenses split into essentials and non-essentials. Whole Foods had been replaced with a local grocer. The golf membership was crossed out with a simple note beside it, "Canceled." At the bottom, she added a line. We didn't know how much we wasted until we had to look. On Friday, I received a handwritten note from my dad, dropped into my building's mailbox. Inside, he wrote that he'd started driving part-time for a rideshare company. Said it was humbling but honest. That meeting new people made the days feel useful again. He'd made $212 his first day and used some of it to refill their pantry. The following week, I saw the ripple begin. Aunt Carol emailed to ask for a payment schedule. Uncle Richard called Charles directly asking if he could submit early payments to reduce his balance faster. When Charles asked why, he said, "I sleep better when I owe less." I wasn't expecting it to all move so quickly, but when people are given structure, when they know what the expectations are, they start making choices with a purpose. A week later, Nathan and I met for coffee. We hadn't spoken much since the meeting. He slid into the seat across from me, hands wrapped around his cup. "My parents saw the article about the trust," he said. "They think you handled it better than most lawyers would have." I nodded. "I just wanted them to take responsibility." He smiled. "You did more than that. You gave them a way back." We sat for a while, just letting the quiet fill in where words weren't needed. Before we left, he told me the venue was still holding our date. He'd paid the deposit himself, said he'd been saving on the side for moments just like that, unexpected but important. At home, I opened my budgeting app and reworked the timeline. With the promotion I'd been offered at work, plus the money I was no longer giving away, I could rebuild the house fund in under 2 years. It had taken me 8 the first time. The following weekend, my mom reached out and asked to meet. She suggested neutral ground, so we picked a local coffee shop neither of us had been to before. She looked different, smaller somehow, less polished, more aware. She didn't launch into anything, just handed me a small envelope. "I sold my jewelry," she said. "It's not much, but it's a start toward paying you back." I didn't open it right away. We sat in silence for a minute before she spoke again. I thought being a mother meant making sure your kids never went without. But I didn't realize how often I'd let you go without peace so the rest of us could stay comfortable. Her voice shook once, then settled. "We weren't just spending money we didn't earn. We were spending yours. And we told ourselves it was love." She stood to leave but turned back before she walked out the door. "Your grandfather gave you control of the trust, but what he really gave you was permission to say no. And I hope someday you'll forgive us for not knowing that ourselves." When I opened the envelope, it held a check and a photo me and Grandpa at my college graduation. On the back, in her handwriting, she'd written, "He knew you'd be the one to hold the line." 6 months passed quietly, the kind of quiet that doesn't come from absence, but from steady effort. Lily kept her job at the dealership, working the customer desk during the week and managing follow-up calls on weekends. At first, she complained. The hours were long, the base pay was modest, and commission didn't come easy. But something shifted around month 4. Her name started showing up on the internal sales board. Customers requested her by name. A manager sent a note through Charles's office, said she was a natural at rapport. That month, she sent in her savings statement, $4,012. I matched it as promised. She used it to buy a used Honda Civic from the same lot where she worked. When she sent me a photo of the keys in her hand, the caption simply read, "It's mine." My parents had adjusted too. The $1,000 monthly allowance didn't stretch far, but they made it work. My mom's blog, Living Smaller, had picked up more traction than either of us expected. She wrote about downsizing, couponing, and late-in-life budgeting lessons. Her most shared post was titled, "Grocery Shopping Without Guilt," and it was reprinted in a small regional paper. Sponsorships trickled in. Nothing major, just pantry brands and a local credit union, but she turned down the ones that didn't align. "I'm not selling people more," she told me on a call. "I'm showing them how to live with less." My dad split his time between driving and volunteering at the Y. He started teaching senior swim classes 3 mornings a week. Said it gave his days structure and his joints a reason to move. One Saturday, he dropped off a handwritten letter for Charles's office. Inside was a check for $200 to $500. The note said, "For the trust. We're ready to start giving back." Even the extended family, once so tangled in excuses, had started showing up differently. Uncle Richard started a small handyman business. It wasn't profitable yet, but he was taking jobs through word of mouth. Aunt Carol became a substitute teacher. Her first paycheck came with a photo of her standing beside a whiteboard. The caption read, "Day 1, again." Collectively, they had paid down over $70,000 in old debt, slowly, honestly, one installment at a time. Charles's office tracked every payment, every receipt. Not one was missed. Meanwhile, Nathan and I finalized the venue for the wedding. Same location, same month. Smaller guest list. The coordinator asked Will, "Your family be contributing?" I answered without hesitation. "They'll be there, but they're not paying." At our next family dinner, now held at my parents' house potluck style, everyone brought something. No one asked for reimbursements. Lily raised her water glass halfway through the meal. "To Rachel," she said, "for loving us enough to let us fall." My mom added, "And for letting us figure out how to stand again." My dad followed, "And for honoring your grandfather's trust in every way." They looked at me, waiting for a reply. I took a slow breath, then raised my own glass. "To Grandpa," I said, "for teaching us that the best gifts aren't handed out. They're earned." As I drove home that night, I passed the bank where I used to keep my house fund. I remembered sitting in that parking lot on lunch breaks, transferring small deposits from each paycheck. The account had been empty once drained by someone I thought I could trust. Now it was growing again steadily, and this time untouched. But the real wealth wasn't in the numbers, it was in the boundaries. 2 years later, Nathan and I stood on the porch of the home we'd just closed on a Craftsman, with a wide front step, a yard shaded by 2 old sycamores, and enough room for everything we'd dreamed about. The house fund I thought was gone had been rebuilt in 18 months. Between the promotion, Nathan's steady support, and a total shift in how I protected my time and energy, it grew faster than I ever expected. And this time, no one else had access to it but me. Lily came by that weekend to help us move. She carried boxes, labeled shelves, unpacked dishes, actually helped, not just hovered with opinions. She brought snacks in a cooler and stayed until the last lamp was plugged in. Before she left, she handed me a housewarming card. Inside was a note. "I finally get it. Thank you for not giving up on me." The trust is still in place, though I've adjusted a few things over time. My parents can now access their retirement savings with oversight. Aunt Carol and Uncle Richard have stayed on track with their payments, even getting ahead some months. Lily renewed her car registration with her own money and signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment across town. She said it's quiet and sometimes a little too small, but she also said it's hers, and that means everything. Everyone in the family attended the financial education course, even the ones who grumbled about it. Uncle Richard told me afterward that at 62 he finally understands how compound interest works. He laughed when he said it, but I could tell he meant it. There was something different in his voice, less pride, more peace. The best change, though, isn't in their habits. It's in the way they talk to me. There's no more guilt-tripping, no more group texts asking for favors. When they reach out now, it's to check in to ask how work is going, to invite me to dinner, and insist I don't bring a thing. For the first time in my adult life, my family sees me as a person, not a purse. I still think about Grandpa sometimes, usually in quiet moments, like when I'm balancing my checkbook or making coffee before sunrise. I hear his voice low and certain, reminding me that love without boundaries isn't love, it's enablement. And that protecting what you've built doesn't make you cold, it makes you a steward. He left me more than control of the trust. He gave me permission to say no, to stop explaining, to draw a line and hold it even when it shakes. That was his real gift. Are we perfect now? No. My mom still sighs when she passes designer stores. My dad misses his Saturday golf games. Lily makes the occasional sarcastic comment about her Honda. But they're different people. We all are. And the Mercedes. It's back on the lot. I saw it parked under the same banner where Lily first posted that photo. Sometimes I think about buying it just to prove I could. But then I remember, some lessons are too expensive to forget. If you've ever had to choose peace over approval or draw a line with people you love, I hope you know you're not alone. And if this story meant something to you, take a moment to share it or just leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what boundaries have taught you too.